So there's several ways you can style your HTML elements, and I'd like to cover that today in a video. So what I have prepared for us is a folder with an index.html, a styles.css with all of the examples we're going to go through today. I have a layout.css just to make it look a little nicer as we're going through all of the different selectors in this video. And without further ado, we can get right into it. So to get started, I wanted to, so essentially explain what we got so far. So we have in the browser, we have two paragraphs and a heading element, a first heading. And you can see that here. So there's a lot of different ways when you're starting to style for a website or for a project that you're working on. There's a lot of ways to select these types of elements. And so I want to go through all of that. A couple of things about the paragraph, or one of the paragraphs has a class attribute of red, an ID attribute of red, and then a data attribute of red. This data-red is a custom attribute, so I wanted to touch on that. Essentially, that's if you want to store some data for a certain element, you can use data dash to make your own custom attribute. In this case, we're just going to use it for an example. Data-red is what we're using. So these custom attributes as well start with data dash. You can't start with it, just saying red. That doesn't work. So you want to say data dash and then whatever you're storing. And let's jump right in. Okay, so the first one I want to cover is the universal selector. And this is one of the more common ones for maybe like reset styles, or whenever you want to kind of reset or neutralize a browser, you often might want to do a universal selector that selects everything and anything and everything. So to make a universal selector, you specify the asterisk, you then give it a rule within the rule set, and then you'll see if we go back to the browser, you'll see that it's now styled in red. All of the paragraphs, both paragraphs in the header. So that's a universal selector. Often you might be using that more for resetting styles from the browser. So that is the first one. The next one you have, which is one I recommend starting with, especially if you're a beginner, is the element selector. And that is strictly just referencing the name of the element from the HTML. So if it's the P for paragraph, you're going to put P. Headers, you're going to put the H1 or whichever type of header you're using. All of these, if you're specifying, you want to target the body, you're going to specify the body element. So that's how you style. You're going to specify the name of the element, curly braces, and then the rule. And you'll see in the browser that targets all of the paragraphs on the page, like so, and not the header. So we're just targeting paragraphs in that example. Now the next one is the class selector. So a class is an HTML attribute. We can see it here. And that's to target a group of elements that have, you want to target all the same and style the same. You can use this. I generally recommend, first styling with the element selectors. I think it's a bit more, don't really get into classes until you really feel the need or it makes, sense logically to add. Let's say you have like a list of links, like social links, you want to style all the same for like styling your Facebook link, your YouTube link, your LinkedIn link. All of that you can put in a group of class. In this case, generally you want to just do just the element selector, but to do a class selector, it's just a period followed by the name of the class and then the rule. And you'll see that in the browser, only the paragraph with the class of red is being styled. If we had another class or another element with a class of red, that will also be styled, like so. Okay. Now the next one is going to be the ID attribute. And the ID attribute here is the one with ID. So that's also an HTML attribute, ID. And to style that, you're going to use the hashtag. So if we open up, uncomment this, you'll see to do an ID, it's hashtag red followed by the rule. And you'll see that paragraph is styled because it has the ID of red. ID is similar to class. The only difference is that it's unique to one element. So you can't be using this several times. I believe, that should give you an error, but let's just, let's see here. So we have an ID. So this is generally not recommended. And you'll see that it still works, but it's not recommended to do that. ID is, specific to one element versus class is for like a group of elements. So if you're going to do a group, use class, otherwise just use ID. And you'll see that that's going to be styled red in the browser, just the element with the ID of red. The next attribute we have is the attribute selector. And this is to select a specific attribute. So you might have several elements, all of the same, and you want to target an attribute. Of all these elements, the one with this attribute you want to target. So the difference with that is you specify the element, followed by brackets, and then you specify the attribute within the brackets, and then state the rule. And you'll see that the paragraph only with the data-red attribute is being styled in the browser. You might want to, this might come in handy if you're building out a form. A form has a lot of attributes like the type, the ID, the name, if it's required or not. So you can style form elements, based on, I want to style all of the form fields with the type of radio button of a radio or type of a checklist. So those are, something you can do with, styling attributes if you're interested. The next one we have is the descendant selector. The descendant selector, there's two we're going to cover. We're going to cover the descendant selector and the child selector. So the descendant selector will style anything and everything that's within, a descendant of a parent element. So in this case, we're saying div, and then after we hit space, P for paragraph. So anything and everything that's a child or a grandchild, all of that's going to get styled in the browser. So as an example, you'll see that we have, in the HTML, we have the div, the parent div, space, and then P for the selector, and you'll see that both paragraphs are being styled in this example because they're children, they're immediate descendants of the div. Now if we had a grandchild or someone like more of a, more deeper in the HTML, so we have a section wrapping another paragraph, you'll see that gets styled as well. So children, grandchildren, anything and everything you can say that's related as a descendant, that's going to be styled with this color red. On the other hand, the child selector is not going to do that. So it's only going to do immediate children. So you'll see, same example, the grandchild is not being styled, but both of the immediate children are getting styled in this example as a paragraph. The next example is the adjacent sibling selector. And really, I want to mention, so for the child selector and the descendant selector, you'll notice that the descendant selector does not have the greater than sign. So it's just a space and then followed by the element or the descendant. So all of the descendants. And then if you want to do a child, you're going to do the greater than sign first, followed by the name of the child. Now for the adjacent sibling, that's in some ways also similar. It's going to be an element. It's going to be, instead it's going to be siblings. So it's going to be elements that are next to each other. So you'll have two elements, and the element that's to the immediately following it, or not preceding but following, it's going to get styled. So if we look at our HTML, you have, let's say, brother and sister here. You've got heading 1 and the paragraph, and these are siblings. And so the adjacent sibling selector is going to be immediately adjacent to, like so. This is the sibling paragraph, not following. So you have two paragraphs. We're saying H1 plus P. So only the P that follows the heading is going to get styled. You'll see that the preceding paragraph doesn't get styled. So that's what the sibling paragraph does, or the adjacent sibling selector. And you'll see also, that grandchild's not getting styled as well. It's only the element that follows. And to do that, you're just going to do a plus. Now, if you wanted to instead do, let's say, you want to do, plus section, plus P, you could almost, hop over. So we can say here. So we say H1 plus P plus section, it's giving the text within the section the color red. So in a way you can, use adjacent sibling to, hop over elements to get to the next one. So we have the heading, we're hopping over the sibling, we're going to the next sibling, which is the section, and we're styling the text within the section red, and that's why that paragraph is turning red, like so. So that's another thing to keep in mind with the adjacent sibling is, you can tack them on one another. The next one is the general sibling selector, and instead of a plus, you're using a little swiggle. And the general sibling selector is going to style all of the siblings that follow. So you'll see that it looks similar at first, but if we start adding more paragraphs, you will see that these also get styled red. So the general sibling selector is going to style every paragraph that follows in this example. The adjacent sibling is just the next paragraph, so it's only going to style the first one, but all of the ones that follow are going to turn red. And the reason that this paragraph isn't turning red is because it's a grandchild, or it's more nested within. It's within a section. If you remove that, then it would become a sibling. Okay, so that's the general sibling. The next one you have is pseudo classes, pseudo class selector. So with the pseudo class selector, you have essentially there's two types. There's pseudo class and pseudo elements, which we're going to cover. Pseudo classes is when it targets your state, and then pseudo elements, which we're going to get to, is targeting content. So pseudo classes, think of changing state. In this case, we're saying, when you hover over the paragraph element, change the color to red. That's one of the more common pseudo classes you'll use. And to make a pseudo class, you're just going to do 1: following the name of the element. So you'll see here, if you hover, it turns red. So only when this change of state happens, which is hovering over the paragraph, make the color red. Another cool one is that I want to mention to consider as well is a pseudo class of not. You're saying give the paragraph colors, all the paragraphs that don't have the ID of red, the color red. So you'll see here, the paragraphs that don't have that ID, which we did earlier, the ID is attached to this one. You're only seeing the color red for the paragraphs that don't use that ID. And just to confirm that, you'll see it here. This paragraph has the ID of red. Give all the other paragraphs the color red. And so that's also something you can consider with pseudo classes, is the state change of not. It's like additional features or factors you can consider when styling, not just just using a general selector. But I would say hover is one of the most common ones for pseudo classes. Now for pseudo elements, you have essentially targeting content, and that could be targeting content within the element or outside of the element. So the most common one you might be seeing often is going to be before and after the element. You might want to add a special icon or something. So in this case, I'm doing the paragraph element followed by 2 colons. So the difference between a pseudo element and a pseudo class is a pseudo element has 2 colons that follow the paragraph element. So 2 colons plus before. So before the paragraph tag, put in this content of this smiley face emoji. And you're going to see that here. All of the paragraphs preceding it. So it's essentially like with that, it's on the boundary line outside of this, this paragraph element. You'll see that this is the icon added after the fact. The other one you can consider, because it's all related, it's all related to content, pseudo elements, is another one is paragraph : first dash line. So only the first line is going to be styled in red. And so if we go back to the HTML, let's say we added a second line here. This is the second line, and we're using a break tag for that. You will see that doesn't get styled in red. It's only the first line, and that's all within the same paragraph element. So pseudo elements isn't just the content that goes outside the paragraph element or any other element. It's also you can manage and target the content within the element as well. So that's the other aspect to consider. So overall, that's just a quick recap. That's a quick overview, quick recap of all of these CSS selectors that you can use for your project or for your website. If you're interested in more of these tips and tricks, be sure to check out MatthewSeward.com. That's it for today. Have a great day.